So, it looks like the 2020s is going to be the era of remaking films from the 2000s. We have a new Narnia remake coming at some point. Warner Bros. And HBO are full steam ahead on making the new Harry Potter series that's likely going to spin off into a massive cinematic franchise, much like HBO's now doing with the world of Game of Thrones with House of the Dragon. Plus, we have all the Disney live-action remakes and a reboot for DC in the works, and so it looks like they're trying to bank on everybody's nostalgia. But a little while ago, a bit of news came out that took me by surprise, that apparently there are plans for the Twilight franchise to have their own reboot. This time in the form of a TV show. And now I say reboot, but that's not necessarily all there is to it. From what I've seen, reports are suggesting they simply want to bring back the franchise in some form. Whether that's a complete reboot, or a spin-off prequel, or sequel, or side story, that remains to be seen. But if you ask me, it's almost a certainty they're just going to bite the bullet and remake the whole thing all over again. And I have mixed feelings about this. On one hand, yeah, I get it. Film and TV is ultimately a business. Everybody's there, at least in the decision-making level, to make money from this. And there's no doubt about it. These books were extremely popular. These films, my god, the films, extremely popular. Off a relatively small budget, at least for the number of films that they made, they grossed like, what, $3 billion or something? Something ridiculously high. And that's pretty damn impressive if you ask me. Pretty damn impressive indeed. And so from that perspective, I think it is a wise business choice to bring back the franchise. It obviously has drawing power. And in all honesty, it'll likely be able to draw serious numbers for whatever streaming service picks it up for a series. However, that being said, despite the fact that it is massively popular even now, over a decade removed from its heyday, I can't help but have a sinking feeling about this whole thing. And I actually kind of hope it's a bit of a misstep. I think the show is going to suck, and it's going to suck hard. And it's also going to find itself lacking the popularity that it once had, or at least I hope so. Yeah, that's right, I hope so. I don't like wishing for things to fail, but if there's any franchise that well and truly needs to go away forever, it is Twilight. I watched the Twilight movies back in the day, who didn't? And I do remember at the time finding them a bit weird, but I guess I figured I wasn't really the target audience. It probably just appeals to other people. But then this recent news came back around again, and I came to the realization that no, it is not me. It is the franchise that is wrong. Like, what the actual hell? How did I actually forget all of this stuff? A quick glance at Wikipedia will go to show there's been mega controversy surrounding the franchise for years, but to me, they managed to slip under the radar. But when this thing gets rebooted, and like I said, odds are it will be, I think the world is going to have to look at it with some extreme side-eye. The show is going to become more controversial than the books and films ever were in their heyday. Because there's just so many things wrong with it. For starters, can we look at the unhealthy relationship dynamics for a second? Okay. So for many, Edward Cullen was the crush of their childhoods. Whether it was through the written word or through Robert Pattinson's dreamy good looks, the character was considered a hunk in his day. He was romanticized and idolized and really just was mega popular in every way. I never took much notice, but having done a bit of cursory research after hearing the news, even just by scrolling on the wiki, my eyebrows were well and truly pushing up into my hairline. Cause this dude oozes toxic abuser. He has all the trappings. On the outside, he's handsome and brooding and sexy, all that sort of stuff. The too good to be true sort of stuff. But it is in his relationship with the series heroine Bella that a really horrendous dynamic starts to take hold. Okay, so yeah, this whole romance is icky as hell. Yuck, yuck, yuck. When Bella meets this dude, he's openly rude and dismissive. He gaslights her pretty hard throughout the book and tries to make her think she's crazy when she cottons on that there's something sus about this sparkly man who can stop a car with his arm. He regularly breaks into her house to watch her sleep, like, the fuck's that? And on top of that, he's like, what, 108 and she's 17? Whilst the body does not age, the mind certainly does. Like, what the hell is this? There's just so much ew. Same with how Edward's like 6 or so years younger than his adopted mum. Really? His mum? What? But yeah, back to the romance. On one hand, you have the romanticizing of an old man, lusting after a teenager and psychologically abusing her to the point that she is solely dependent on him and his family. Remember, her dad, her friends, her mum. The story just wants you to forget they exist at points. Bella's a vampire now and she's with the vampires and that's that. Her old life can piss off. It feels like an overall representation of an abusive relationship. You get the victim to depend on you, to obsess over you and earning your approval, and you isolate her from her peer group and her family and then rinse repeat, you've got 'em. Lovely. There's nothing quite like trying to convince teenagers everywhere that being utterly subservient to the life and whims of your much older boyfriend is a relationship dynamic to be striving for. Ew. Just ew. But that's not even the worst relationship dynamic in the show itself. There is actually much worse because and I forgot this was even a thing, I must have blocked it out. The wolf dudes, they apparently imprint. And this is considered good and romantic by the narrative. The only time it's considered gross is by Bella when her side piece, Jacob, who's been on the hook with no chance with this girl for like, what, the entire story up to this point, imprints on her newborn daughter. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, a baby? Really? Soulmating with a baby? Ugh. Another example is one of the other dudes from the pack imprinting on some other random 2 to 3 year old, and, you know, it's considered a good thing. These relationships are apparently at the whim of the imprintee. So if the girls just want them as a dad/older brother figure, which is what they are when the little girls are small, they act like that, then there's that. But if they want to eventually romance them someday, the dudes have no choice, and they'll actually be all for it, despite the fact that they've played a key role in these kids' upbringing. Full steam ahead. So already, you're walking the line of a lack of consent for the poor wolfie dudes, but then you're also adding some disgusting grooming into the mix, and it's just so deeply fucked on so many levels. Who writes this shit? Imprinting, that's one thing, yeah? I'm sure some people find being unable to choose your own path and all that shit the height of romance. But to me, it's whack, and it's made worse when it's a teenage/adult man and a little girl. Pedo bear, you have a new playmate. Introducing the pedo wolves. So already my disdain for this franchise has gone off the charts. You know, usually I like to live and let live, and the story is what it is. I don't like to yuck people's yum, know what I mean? But the romance is foul. Some are fine, but the main couple and the whole wolf pack stuff, it's rank. No thanks. And that alone makes me never want to see it put to screen again. But there is actually more. Because holy shit, some of the shit that constitutes the world building in this franchise? Ugh, how do you include any of this? So from what I understand, right, the author has taken a legitimate Native American tribe, taken its founding myths and traditions, and turned them into shirtless teenager hunky werewolf men. And also, they're the same guys that fall in love, or at least become devoted to and obsessed with, children, or random people they've just met. And it's against their own will. So basically, you take this real living culture, you exploit it for money, bastardize its heritage, you fetishize it, and then profit after calling them pedos. Look, I know sometimes what constitutes cultural appropriation can be a grey area, but for me, this is textbook, right? How do you write this and think it's okay? And from what I've read, the people actually represented by this do not like it. And why would you? It's completely understandable. Imagine your culture, which was eviscerated by invaders, then being used in a teen vampire romance novel. Your culture fetishized, your ancient belief systems and legends turned into a cash grab, all by somebody who seems to have no connection to your culture at all, and probably won't give you any money for it. It's not a good look. Not by a long shot, and so I don't see how you can include this kind of shit in the current era of film and TV, because this would undoubtedly spark major criticism in this day and age, wouldn't it? The world has changed a lot in the last decade or so, especially in terms of the popularity and reach of social media. And pushing back against films and shows and books and people that are deemed out of touch and problematic for the morals of today's society, or at least some portions of society, is now very commonplace. And so I don't see how this would ever be viewed as acceptable, and it really shouldn't be. This isn't a case of Harry Potter where the author has controversial views, but for the most part, the text is not damaging anyone. A whole portion of this story is built on racism and abuse. You can't keep it, not the weird relationship shit, and certainly not the cultural appropriation either. And it's made worse by the fact that you combine that cultural appropriation with elements of child molestation and pedophilia and grooming. And so yeah, it ascends. It is no longer a franchise that's just slightly cringe but isn't hurting somebody, but it's actually just quite problematic in so many different ways. And it would need some serious rewrites that would need to be undertaken to even attempt putting it to screen again. And even then, would it still be the same story? So much would have to be changed. And on top of that, if the rumours of the creator being heavily involved are true, I doubt those elements would ever change anyway. So no thanks, Twilight. You've had your day. You're a product of your time. You shouldn't be brought back. Stay in the past. I beg you, and die. And so yeah, there's nothing really else to say. I hope Twilight stays gone forever. I probably won't be that lucky, but it is what it is. And so with all that being said, I'll just remind you that these were just my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about a potential Twilight remake? Are you on board with it, or do you kind of agree with me? It's too outdated, and its morals are completely whack. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.